Good evening, everyone. Good to see you all. Before I start talking, I wanted to ask you all if you had any questions or comments about anything we've discussed in the last few weeks before we uh, launch into something new.
Excuse me, Jeffrey, I can hardly hear you.
Okay. All right. Is that any better, Joe?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Thanks for letting me know. So I was asking if there are any questions or comments before we move on to something new. Margaret, yes.
I think I appreciate very much the uh, reminders about Donna and as difficult as that typically is for any nonprofit group, let alone retail group. And I thought you did an excellent job of reminding us and acknowledging the difficulty at the same time as, I mean, setting aside time to bring that up was, in my interpretation, courageous and well done, even though I'm not meant to judge or evaluate. So anyway, thank you.
Well, thank you, Margaret. I appreciate that comment. And it is somewhat difficult and uncomfortable, and yet it's also just a simple reality of any organized group. And really, I hope one of the things I was hoping to convey is just sort of to give that background information and Dharma about what it is, and um, you know, and let each of us figure out how we relate to that. So nothing needs to change. No behavior needs to change. Nothing needs to be different. But it's just offered as a shedding light on one small part of a path. So thank you for listening, and thank you for your comments.
I'd like to say one thing. I had to re-enter my information again tonight or I couldn't get on. I don't know if that's something that's happening.
It I had to make an adjustment to something in Zoom, so it might be you might have to re-enter that information tonight. Hopefully that won't persist. It should be a one-time thing.
Okay.
For the next, it should be good for the next few months, so or year or something like that. Anyway, I had to change the calendar. So
you'll probably be getting a bunch of emails about our registration information and how frequently we sit and all that kind of stuff as well. So,
okay. So it asked you to re-enter that initial information again. Okay. Well, I appreciate that.
Thank you guys for saying that, because I thought it was just because I was using my phone. It took me forever to get in. So I appreciate hearing that. Thank you.
It's a good reminder that we're all always beginners. All starting over again every time. Every moment. Yeah. Anything else? All right then. Um, so I was sort of reflecting on what we've been doing and uh, really personally enjoyed talking about the Noble Eightfold Path, which is sort of what I call basic Buddhism. It's really uh, foundational teachings, very essential kinds of teachings. And particularly when it comes to on-goes, I like to do uh, mix basic Buddhism with a little more um, Zen, with Zen specifically. Um, so this last one was basic Buddhism, but helpful for any practice that we do. And I was also thinking back on the talks about sila and ethical behavior, and I made a comment uh, um, uh, when talking about sila of the way we express it in Zen is most often through the precepts, what are called the precepts. And I realized, having made that comment, you all might not know what the precepts are. So I thought that I would take some time, I don't know how long, but talk about the precepts in Zen and its relevant, since two of us in the Sangha um, are preparing to receive the precepts. So um, I thought, as a way to help understand what the precepts are and to help support Laurel and Scott in their process, I thought we'd talk about the precepts a little bit. So, um, any questions before we launch in? Okay. So, um, what are called precepts really have to do with behavior, with sila, with ethical behavior, and there are a number of ways to kind of understand or relate to them. There are Buddhists like to make lists, so there are in most any Buddhist group, whether it's Mahayana or Theravada, there are five sort of core precepts, and then in Zen we like to elaborate with five more. So for us in our tradition and our lineage, there are 10 what are called prohibitory precepts. And what that sort of means is um, they can be stated in either a negative way or they can be stated in a positive way. And they're often, just in terms of memorization, stated in a negative way. So we call them prohibitory precepts. And I'll just go through them and we'll talk more about each of them as we go. But the 10 prohibitory precepts, and I'll speak of them in the negative right now. Um, the first one is no killing, not to kill. Second one is no stealing. Third one is um, uh, often called chaste conduct or no sexual excess. The fourth one is not lying. And the fifth one is not being deluded or not taking intoxicants. So those are kind of the core five you find throughout Buddhism, stated in the negative that way. But in Zen, as I said, and in Soto Zen, we add five more. And one of them is to not talk about others' errors or faults or praise or blame. It's often referred to, not engaging in praise or blame. And then there is not elevating oneself and blaming others. The next one is to not be stingy with the Dharma. The next one is to not be angry. Not be angry. And then the last one is to not abuse or think ill of the three treasures, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So those are just to run through them, the 10 grave or prohibitory precepts stated in the negative. Now, it's very easy to think of these as sort of behavioral prescriptions. We're all in the West familiar with the Ten Commandments, right? Thou shalt not. And one could relate to the precepts in that way. But I don't myself believe that that's how they're meant to be related to. Let me go through this list again, except state them in a different way, in a positive way. These are often called the clear mind precepts. So I mentioned no killing, no taking life. Another way to understand that would be cultivating and encouraging life. Talked about no stealing, not taking. Another way to say it would be honoring the gifts not yet given. The third one, not attaching to fulfillment. We might say in a positive way, remaining faithful in our relationships. Not lying, no illusory words. We might say or call that communicating truth. Not, as it's sometimes called, taking intoxicants or selling the wine of delusion. We might say it in a different way as polishing clarity or dispelling illusion, that which isn't true. Not dwelling on past mistakes. We could say in a positive way, creating wisdom from ignorance. not praising yourself or blaming others, we could say in a positive way, is maintaining modesty and extolling others. Not being stingy, not hoarding uh, things or materials. We could say sharing, understanding, freely giving of self. That's dana, that's generosity. Not being angry, stated differently, dwelling in equanimity. And then the last one, not abusing or hoarding the three treasures. We could say respecting Buddha, respecting the innate wakefulness of all beings, unfolding the Dharma for ourselves and others, nourishing the Sangha, nourishing the community that supports our practice. So, um, you know, we sometimes have a tendency, and some more than others, to um, especially when we're confused or uncertain, to sort of go to the literal kind of uh, understanding, which would be the kind of negative, prohibitory sort of understanding. But I hope you can see by reading them in a positive way how it really expands the intention of what is being communicated, the wisdom of these precepts. I kind of think of them as um, the Buddha saying, "Hey, if you want to go beyond samsara, stay away from these kinds of behaviors." You know, when we're talking about the negative prohibitory precepts are spoken of in that way. Kind of do these things, you know, when we're talking about the clear mind, positive version of these. Do these things. And of course, all of these precepts, they all relate back to um, the Noble Eightfold Path, you know, in particular, ethical behavior. So this is sort of a fleshing out of that in a slightly different way. And one question that often comes up, I remember when I was sort of considering receiving the precepts, was, well, who's keeping track, you know? Who's why am I doing this? Or who am I doing it for? Or, you know, that kind of thing. But really, uh, uh, each of us is the one who keeps score for ourselves, not for anyone else. These are often talked about and understood as natural, innate expressions of behavior. That these are uh, innate aspects of Dharma. And you can kind of, if you reflect on these a little bit, kind of see, oh, yeah, these are sort of encouraging me in a particular way. They're not meant to be sort of like yardsticks. They're not meant to be commandments, yes or no. Not many, if any, things in Buddhism and certainly in Zen are yes or no, black or white. When you start to kind of sit with these and sort of consider them, there's a lot of room here. There's a lot of room. So if we're looking for things to sort of corral our behavior, these don't do that very well. and they're not intended to do that. They are intended to help us wake up to what we do and how we are, as we talked about when we were talking about sila. And we won't go into, a bunch of specifics tonight. And there are many, many versions, many wordings of these precepts. So there's not sort of one version of them. There are many, many versions, many different understandings. So I don't really want to go into, like I said, the specifics in each of these tonight. But I just wanted to sort of introduce us, get us sort of inclined to begin thinking about these a little bit, either for ourselves or to consider, what Laurel and Scott might be doing, what they're up to, what they're thinking about. And in Zen we call this jukai, which means to receive the precepts. And it's also called lay ordination. And it kind of, it a generic kind of a meaning is that it's kind of a stepping in a somewhat formal way to the community of practitioners. For me, it is it's like, this path is helping me. I wanna really focus and dedicate more intention and effort on this because it's been so helpful for me. I remember that was my motivation when I was undertaking to receive the precepts. And we don't take the precepts, although it's sometimes stated that way, you know, like we're taking some kind of medicine or, something as a, as a some kind of sour medicine or bitter medicine. Um, again, I suppose you could relate to it that way, but I don't find it that helpful. But it is to receive these precepts and sit with them, work with them, because they're not easy. They really, when you start to, and Laurel and Scott can share their experience if they want. But when you when you start to like think about these and consider these more deeply, and then sort of see how you are in relationship to these, it's like, oh, oh, this is hard. This is not this is not easy. Wow. I thought I was I was pretty nice about people, but I realized that I was saying something about this person, or I had some kind of judgment, or my language was uh, you know, such and such judgmental, or whatnot. I mean, it really can be a profound practice to sit with these. And I, encourage all of us, not just Laurel and Scott, all of us to kind of think about this and sit with these for a little bit, see what it's like. Uh, so maybe I'll end my comments there for tonight and open it up. Anybody have any comments of their own or questions?
I just was hoping also that I could ask you to talk a little bit about the three pure precepts, and just like how they relate to these other precepts, and maybe a little bit of sort of like history of where they come into the larger Buddhism and into our Soto Zen practice.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I will. Thank you, Scott. I will talk more about the different kinds of precepts. There are more. Um, there are the way most people count, 16 in all for those of us in Soto Zen. And I talked about the sort of more concrete ones, if you will, these what are called prohibitory precepts, or for thinking of them as the clear mind precepts. Um, these are the ones that most clearly relate to specific kinds of behavior. And so in a way, they're easiest to grasp. So that's why I decided to start with these, but I will talk about the other precepts, the refuges and the pure precepts.
Well, I can attest that these are harder. These precepts are harder than they seem, I guess, as the way to look at it. Maybe more challenging, and just they get deeper every time I look at them. For
Mm-hmm.
example, the just to take one of the ones that I felt like, yeah, I'm probably pretty good. I was kind of like doing a little checklist. Yeah, I'm okay here. Probably got that one. A little work here. But looking at just a simple one, like I'm a vegan, right? And still this one about cultivating and supporting life, or in the prohibitory fashion, not killing it. There's just no way you can live on this earth and not kill, because you're going to either eat plants or breathe in a bug, or things are going to happen. You're going to have a tick on you, and you're going to be gardening and put your spade through a slug, because you're trying to grow those vegetables to eat. It's and so thinking about it that way, I think the nuance that I get from the sort of clear mind precepts, or the positive phrasing of that, is about balance, cultivating life. So I do what I can do to support, and cultivate life. And that's going to be different for, different people. But for me, I have that intentionality, and I think that's what these precepts, all of them, at least the ones so far that I've studied, I'm pretty much presuming all of them have this kind of same that same kind of nuance where there's some balance and there's some work to be had, and sometimes they, like no lying, there are times when it is appropriate and kindest and most skillful to say something or to avoid saying something, that say something that's not true, or to avoid saying something. So anyway, just the nuance and the sort of intentionality is what I've gotten from it, as well as the fact that, and especially when phrased positively, that we are all connected. And you were saying, who's watching or who's doing this? Well, nobody has to, because whatever we do radiates out and kind of pours in. We're independent and interdependent in this world. It's that not one, not two kind of thing. And so that's one of the other things that I've appreciated while studying this. It's just like, okay, this could, this is a little deeper. So no questions, just a big long comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Yeah. When we start to talk about behavior, it gets very complicated very quick. It's like karma. It gets very complicated very quick. And there really aren't easy answers. There's very little black and white. It's mostly gray, and it's finding our way through it. And one way to relate to these is that these are things that can help sort of guide us in the inherent complexity of life. And these are founded on the deeper wisdom of, our interconnectedness, that things are constantly changing, the three marks of existence, that unsatisfactoriness is an inherent part of this life as we know it. So the precepts in a way are just are another way to really help us deepen our practice, deepen our wisdom. That's sort of how I might suggest we work with them. Is handle them lightly, not judgmentally. That's not helpful at all. Let's not turn them into something that we harm ourselves with. That's not how they're intended to be used. Anyone else?
Well, I can speak up a little bit. One of the things that I really appreciated, I've shared a fair amount, because I've been really working with the precepts for, I don't know, I think probably maybe since like August of last year. So, what I noticed is, like you were talking about the impermanence and how things are ever changing. And one of the things that I notice is that working with the precepts, that I'll make a change by being more aware of something, and then it shifts, and then the awareness shifts to a different thing, or something else comes up that I thought that I was maybe feeling pretty balanced with, but then it comes out of balance. And so just being really working with them regularly, like you were saying, that it's a form of the practice. For me, it helps me feel connected all the time. Like I am even if I'm not sitting on the cushion, in my conversations, whether they're at work or in the grocery store or, with my family or my friends, they all have context. They all create a part of, all the precepts they work into what I do on a daily basis. And uh, it just happens after a while. And I think that for me, part of it is, going hand in hand with the sitting, that integration really creates a much more stable environment for me to learn more about them and to practice them on a deeper level, like you were saying. And there are just so many different facets to them. And it really does. It's like an opening light into learning more about myself and taking a lot of light off of what other people are doing, really focusing more on just that we're really all the same, and but we have different things that have influenced us, right? And we have different ways that we've grown and different ways that we choose to do things, but we're all the same, and we can all learn and grow from practicing and really bringing these to life in our own lives and in our own practice. So I don't know. That may have not made any sense at all, but hopefully it did. Anyway, it does to me. I guess that's what counts, right?
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Made a great deal of sense. And one thing in particular is that when we first start to work with these, if we decide to do that, incorporate these into our practice, it can be somewhat it can be a little rough because, Scott was talking about, oh, I think I got that one down. I got, I can check that box and, and, and then we find out, oh, well, maybe I can't quite check that box, the way that I thought. And as Laurel mentioned, these are always changing. Life is dynamic and it's always changing. But what does tend to happen, I've noticed in myself and others, working with others with these, is that they do over time kind of uh, give a stability to our practice and to our behavior and to our life. And they can be very, very helpful in that way. When life and situations are ambiguous and in our face, and what do we do? And when we practiced with these things, it's like, oh yes, we can go back to this. I can apply this. I can use this medicine. Anyone else?
Yeah, I have a little bit to say. I've been struggling with certain people, and I think that the more calm I am and listening to your talks helps me, and also being here, of course. And I realize it goes right back to me. It's how my behavior is. So if I'm not acting right, it's not going to work. Whatever it is, it's not going to work out. So might tend to blame other people, and in situations, and it's their problem. But the thing is, it's always look in the mirror. It's how I face them and deal with them, and am I being kind? Am I being nasty? I'm not usually nasty, but what is my approach? And I'm learning more every day, and I've dealt with more teams lately than I have for a long time. I'm talking about with others. I have my own stuff and to get into all that, but that's got nothing to do with these other people. And sometimes I notice I can be in kind of grouchy, and I'm thinking, boy, it's not that person, that's for sure. They're the way they are.
Mm.
So, well, these things help me. I'm not delving into it like Scott and Laurel, but I'm still here.
Mm.
Seem to still be here. That's it.
Good. Thank you.
I seem to be, right?
Yeah. Yes, yes. Well, we don't have to work with these in a formal way. We can. We don't have to work with them in a formal way. And it's interesting. I'll just make one more comment. Uh, sort of um, when you receive the precepts through Jukai, you um, do the three refuges, and then you do the large precepts, and then you do these other 10 precepts, and we do them in a particular order, and I'll talk about this later on in the Jukai ceremony. And it's the very same ceremony when I became ordained as a priest. It's the very same ceremony. Nothing changes, except there's a little more clothing involved in being a priest. A little more sewing, a lot more sewing, actually. But uh, and some other things. I'm sort of making light of it, um, but it's essentially the same ceremony. These are central, absolutely central to deepening one's practice. You know, I'm about to undertake transmission with my teacher, and I will take these very same precepts yet again. It's the very same precepts. That's how central and important they are, or can be, how helpful they are. Well, thank you all for your effort and your intention. Thank you for being here tonight and practicing together. And I look forward to seeing you all next week, and we'll continue on with this. And I hope you all received my email about our practice on July 10th. We'll be having remembrance for Taizan Gendo for Mark Adams. And so we'll have a little kind of a little bit of a ceremony. We'll do some chanting of the Heart Sutra, maybe something else. So that's coming up as well.
I sent some emails. I guess they were to maybe 3 or 4 people that
Mhm.
I mentioned to you, Jeffrey,
Mhm. Yeah.
like Chris and John Worthington. I forget who the other couple were. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, send it to whoever you feel it's appropriate to send
Oh,
it to.
my niece Jenna. That's right.
Good. Good. Well, have a wonderful, safe week, and I'll look forward to seeing you all next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everybody.
Jeffrey.
Night.
Thanks, Jeffrey.